Elementals are one of the topics we've often mentioned, but I believe that they are also one of the topics that are greatly misunderstood or just simply unfamiliar to a large portion of viewers. Today, I think it would benefit all of us to take a closer look and see exactly what it is that we are referring to when we mention elementals and or the elemental realm. Welcome back to Into the Veil. I'm Rachel, and I'm glad you're here with me today. So we have 4 primary elements that we are most familiar with, and these have been a part of our makeup since the beginning of, well, basically everything. These forces of nature are often classified according to one of the 4 kinds of expression that we see all around us on a daily basis. Earth, air, water, and fire are nature's expressions. Operating at the most primal level with these expressions in the natural world and with sentient beings in charge of them that are often referred to as elementals. These beings are those that work under or directly with the prime elements of nature and creation. Most of us are familiar with the earth element and are reasonably familiar with those in charge of it, which would be the gnomes. There are other earth elements like dwarves, brownies, and even perhaps more negative expressions that would operate as trolls or goblins. The water elements would be known as undines, and this would include selkies, merfolk, water nymphs, and so on. Air beings are typically more well known as sylphs, and the most common sylph that we would be aware of would be the fairies. There are others, but the fae folk, the fairies, are actually more present in our history than almost any other element. Now, when we come into the expression of fire, this is known to be run by salamanders. But I will also include the phoenix as part of this fire energy. And each of these elements represents an aspect of us as people. The earth element representing our physical body. The water element as our emotional body. Air element typically would be our mental plane, our mental body. And the fire element is often in our creativity, desire, will. And if any of these are out of balance, oftentimes we are susceptible to the elements in nature reflecting that imbalance, either as individuals or as a collective. So when we're working with these and we begin to examine what is showing in our 3D world, if we are subject to, say for example, whether individually or as a consciousness, a group consciousness, oftentimes if there's a lot of sadness, the sky will begin to weep with us. Or certain areas, if there's a lot of emotional overwhelm to the people, they would be more susceptible to flooding and even so much as tsunamis. On the earth plane, if we're stressed and unhinged down to our very core, the earth will respond by shaking beneath our feet. If a large amount of the populace, or in our personal space, is suffering with anger, fires can rage all around us. If there's too much mental activity going on and not enough feeling activity going on, we can be subject to straight winds, or the air element may coalesce with the earth element and create tornadoes or things pertaining to this type of environment. A lot of times we want to keep these things separate from ourselves. We want to feel like it's them or that and us. But part of our journey in this last year and a half has been in understanding oneness, understanding how all things are connected. There are a multitude of energies working in these planes of existence. A lot more than I can mention here. But hopefully, we can get a little clarity and we can see the association between all of us and see how these energies are there to assist us, to make us aware, and to further our growth. A lot of times when we get into the topic of fae folk and elves and so on, it's broad, and we as people want to believe they're little tiny, insignificant, invisible forces of nature. But something to bear in mind: don't mistake the fae folk or the elves to be tiny and mostly unseen. On the contrary, they can fit in and appear very much like regular human beings. Historically and repeatedly, there have even been reports of these taking up companionship with humans, and on rare occasion even producing offspring with humans. The half-blooded offspring, especially from the fairy and the elven realms, are more likely to display personality traits directly in line with their elemental lineage. These children display a characteristic of being that is true energy and consciousness, bringing it into an outward expression. It's important that we remember there's also a fifth element. Now, once upon a time, historically, they thought human beings, were the fifth element because we housed spirit as well as air, earth, water, and fire. And when I was contemplating this about a week ago, I must have fallen asleep thinking about man being the fifth element. And something just didn't feel right to me, but I couldn't get my finger on it. And I woke up the next morning, and still in that semi-dream state, kind of getting my first cup of coffee, still feeling a little bit groggy. Very clearly, the thought came to me: man is the sixth element. We are the fifth. Now, for those of you that have followed with us, you know that I work with Anku, who has represented himself as a master of energy, a master of high consciousness, and has taught us well on the dynamics between the internal and the external world, the as above, so below, and so on. And I felt that he had worked with me through the course of the night in understanding elementals, understanding the energy of elementals. So in that, I pondered it for quite a while, probably a good 2 cups of coffee. And I thought to myself, the 5th element. What is the 5th element? And it's ether. Ether is cosmic. Ether is the energy of the universe. Inasmuch as it is often associated with what we would call the void. And it is probably the least known element to man. So we now have earth, air, fire, water, and ether. Ether is also oftenly called quintessence, and it represents crown consciousness, the crown chakra. It is solar. It's the power of life. Oftentimes it's very electrical, uses light, and has a multitude of attributes. When I looked this up, I found all but 100 known abilities to beings of ether. But I think it's that important for us to understand this energy. Not only in order that we can align ourselves with it and help our own growth, but to acknowledge the very present energy of it in our lives if we are receptive to receiving it and experiencing it. If we examine any of the elements by themselves, essentially none of them can exist without another. Now, some may or may not get along naturally together. Water and fire, for example, fire and air, one can consume another. So too much of one energy can deplete another energy. But it's the same within us. Too much mental space does not give enough room for feeling. Too much feeling space can often inhibit mental clarity. If our emotional body is out of line, it can knock our physical body for a loop, and we can suffer disease and illness with blockages to the energies trying to express themselves. So all of these things play together. When any energy is out of balance, it can also invite the negative version of that energy. It is said that if people suffer more negative thought, or perhaps have more despair about them, that this can invite, say, air energies that would try to plant the seeds of jumping off of high buildings. Or, for those with too much emotional and no balance in the others, it could give them thoughts of drowning themselves. People that are often present with a very strong will and a huge push in the fire energy, I believe, are the ones that actually have been known to literally combust. And we can also look at people with too much root physical energy, too much survivalist instinct rather than spiritual balance. Sometimes these are mortified of being, buried alive, or they might even be agoraphobic. So there are a multitude of ways that these energies present themselves. And usually it's to try to get our attention. It's to try to say there's too much here and not enough here. Because these energies are really put in place to create balance within us. And they become reactionary to what's being projected around them. So let's talk about other, because I think this is where the people come in. So what do we know about Sasquatch? What do we know about the people? Originally, the experience with them was more well known on what we would consider a negative level. Rock throwing, the use of infrasound, which can cause lapses in time, mind control, states of feeling frozen with fear, emotional manipulation. But we also know that they use ultrasound. They can be visible in a physical form. Sometimes they'll show up in a shadow form, while other times they're completely invisible. We know that they use mind speak, that they have superhuman strength, superhuman hearing, and that they can read the intention and the heart space of any person. We've seen that they are pros at animal communication, for us, particularly birds, but I'm sure that there are other animals that we haven't been made aware of yet. We know that they have to have the trees, not only as a means of camouflage, but that they also use the essence of the life of the tree. And I believe that's very connected to photosynthesis and other attributes to sunlight. They seem to know what we're doing before we've even gotten into their space. I know for us personally, they've used our dream state often to help teach us. In working with Anku, who is an energy, a teacher, an individual, and that has been amazing at teaching us about the people. We know he often speaks of the one heart and the one mind. They also have an exceptional knowledge of portals and the veil itself. They are empathic and they are healers. On certain occasions, we have seen that they also can manipulate electronics to include cameras, and often will affect batteries. And there are so many other attributes to these people, but those are probably the top 15 that came to my mind. So, in understanding and researching the abilities of beings that are from other, from and using the cosmic energy of other, I have pulled out basically only a handful of these abilities that are known to these sentient beings. The ones that I have selected are directly in line with what we have experienced and learned about the people also. So in this fifth element of other, they have the ability, these beings, of converting their breath into weapons. And when you think about that, and we think about infrasound and the way that they breathe over their vocal cords, that oftentimes this is what's producing that frequency. They have the ability to manipulate memory and emotions. Mind control in some cases, and the ability to freeze objects, which all of those specific abilities for the beings of other directly remind me of infrasound. But I also would have to remember that these are things that could be used in our favor also. If we're having a bad day, perhaps being able to work energy and bring it into a better place, or helping us forget and heal from a painful past memory. Mind control can also be more in the focus of thought. So just always remember, for every negative there's a positive. Every positive there can be a negative. So beings, elemental beings of ether, physically are known to have superhuman strength, super hearing, the ability to be invisible, but also the ability to become physical, to use weather and other magical phenomena, such as things dropping out of thin air, or so it would seem. These same beings, on an empathic level, on a psychic level, are also capable of recalling memories from individuals. They're extremely telepathic. And they have a built-in truth and lie detector. They're known for animal communication, life infusion, which when I think of the people, I think of the way that they utilize the energy of trees, for example. Being able to control light and shadow, which is otherwise known as photokinesis. Having a strong sixth sense and knowing before it happens. Simultaneously using dream states. They're known to be guardians and allow access to the Akashic records and to the ancient ones that hold the information of all that is. On a magnetic and electrical level, the beings that reside in ether use earth elements that are particularly magnetic. They're known to create static pressure, electrical charges in the air. They're said to be able to create shields of pure electrical energy. Likewise, they're also capable of using radio signals or other bandwidths, and electrokinesis, which is the ability to control and create pure electrical energy. It can control all forms of electrical power, to include gadgets or anything that uses electrical power. Lastly, the elements of ether, as a force of nature, they have the ability to wield absolute energy. Simultaneously, they can project a force field of energy. On occasion, they've been known to release blinding light from the heart of the universe. And if needed, they can summon energy from the heart of the universe. They're known to be able to open and close holes in the veil, which could also be enabling interdimensionals to either enter or escape through these said holes. They are able to open folds in time and space. And they are also able to see potential futures through either dream state or even liquids. Like I said, there are nearly 100 abilities listed. But these that I've mentioned, if we go back over it, sound to me to be a clear representation of the abilities, the attributes that we have experienced with the people, with Sasquatch. So with that, we would have to think about the thought that came of man being the sixth element. Coexistence is a must. We cannot exist if any of these are missing from life. I'm going to say this one more time. If any element ceases to exist, all life ceases to exist. It is the elemental being's job to keep the harmony and the balance in order. We've all heard the phrase, being out of one's element. Without them, we will have an imbalance at some level. They charge us up, they energize us, provide us with the fuel we need to feel life and all of our connectivity in it, the harmony that we are meant to feel in it. We give them a measure of raising their consciousness and developing themselves as beings, and likewise they are willing to assist us with our own growth. The physical, emotional, mental, creative, and spiritual facets to who we are all intended to work in harmony with these energies. So as we explore these things, it's only meant to offer you a perspective that can help to make sense of things that are otherwise attributed to aliens or to, a much more unknown factor that feels separate from us rather than a factor that would work with us. In an attempt to help us spiritually evolve, all of these beings work together and work with us, and our resistance determines much of that outcome. But just a little food for thought as we speak of elementals and we speak of the elemental realm as to just how important these energies might be to our well-being, besides just in the woods or just in a pool of water or a garden. How much more are they doing to help us align the bodies that we hold within us, the expressions that we hold within us? If any of you are interested, you are welcome to email me for information on a personal reading or channeling session. Likewise, if you would like to visit buymeacoffee.com/into-the-veil, you can follow my page that will be developing as we go along. If you're interested in buying me a cup of coffee, that'd be great too. Lord knows I love my coffee. But all of it does go to support the channel and to help us further explore the greater meanings of life. Thank you for being here, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next go.